Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies, and the city of Philadelphia has a new champion. It's not the Philadelphia Phillies. So how does the Eagles Super Bowl affect the way that this town is going to look at the Philadelphia Phillies? We'll discuss that from a baseball perspective on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space here in Philadelphia. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio for 5 years here in Philadelphia. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that you're rating and reviewing. If you're watching on YouTube, you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button. It's free and easy. Locked On Phillies channel on YouTube. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. Appreciate everyone who's done that and everyone who's going to do that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So, I know if you're a regular listener of Locked On Phillies, regular viewer of Locked On Phillies, you're like, Connie, you haven't really posted a crazy amount recently. Yeah, there was this little thing called the Super Bowl going on. And as much as I do this day in and day out here for Locked On Phillies, also radio job, do a lot of stuff around the Philadelphia Eagles. So first and foremost, congrats to the Birds. If you're a Phillies fan, you're most likely also an Eagles fan. An absolutely monumental win in Super Bowl 59 over the Kansas City Chiefs. Go ahead and check out the guys on Locked On Eagles. That's our Locked On Podcast Network show covering the Philadelphia Eagles the same way I do the Philadelphia Phillies. They'll break down the game. They'll break down everything. So go ahead and check them out when you get done with this episode. I'm sure they're going to have amazing stuff. But I have a different perspective on this game for this podcast today that I haven't really had a chance to talk about. So this does affect the Philadelphia Phillies. And you might be like, Connor, how in the world does the Eagles winning the Super Bowl before the Phillies have even reported to spring training affect the Philadelphia Phillies? It doesn't make sense necessarily. It makes perfect sense. Think how close the stadiums are down there in the South Philadelphia Sports Complex where these teams play. Citizens Bank Park is right next to the link. When I go down there to host our Eagles pregame show, I park at the Citizens Bank Park parking lot. They're next door neighbors. And this fan base is so intertwined. And what happens with one team affects the mentality surrounding other teams. And now the Philadelphia Phillies, they take center stage. I think in some ways, this Super Bowl win for the Eagles takes pressure off the Philadelphia Phillies. And in other ways, it puts an incredible, insane amount on. So how does it balance out? Well, let's start with the pressure that it takes off the Philadelphia Phillies. This fan base here in Philadelphia has had so many years of great teams. And let's just look at the Phillies. Years of great teams where it's the expectation is you do something special and they come up short. 2023 against the Arizona Diamondbacks. That was probably their best opportunity to win a World Series in a while since they actually did win one and came up short. 2024, this past year, you go out to the Mets after winning the division for the first time in 13 years. 2022, you make it to the World Series, you lose to the Houston Astros. We know the Phillies have been close, but they haven't summited the mountaintop. And because of that, this fan base is in a weird spot relationship-wise with the Philadelphia Phillies. They're the team that can't get over the hump. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Eagles just won their second Super Bowl in 8 years. They just went to their second Super Bowl in 3 years. They are the gold standard of Philadelphia sports, but the Eagles are always going to be in this town the team that affects the mood of the city the most, the team that the people football is king here in Philadelphia. And I know this is a baseball podcast. Baseball could very well be number 2, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I think the euphoria of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl does actually do some great things for the Phillies. One, the fan base, every time you get annoyed at Trey Turner for making an error at shortstop, or a bullpen pitcher for giving up a home run or a big hit somewhere or something, or a strikeout by Brandon Marsh or something. Like anything that you've been annoyed about in the past with the Phillies, I do think there's a large portion of the fan base that will say, yeah, but the Eagles won the Super Bowl. And it may lead to a softer, kinder fan base that says, hey, we're a city of the most recent Super Bowl champion. The Phillies have been pretty darn good, and we may be taking stuff for granted, and it may make us softer as a fan base to see the Philadelphia Eagles win their second Super Bowl. It also is good for the Philadelphia Phillies in a way that it motivates these players. Like Bryson Stott was on MLB Network after the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl and was talking with the guys. And he was discussing how they interact with guys on the Eagles all the time. They see those guys when they have off days in like September and October, when the Eagles season begins. They try and get over if they have an off day on a game day for the Birds. The Birds come to the bank and see baseball games during the off season and all that stuff. So the fabric of the city's sports culture sports scene is intertwined, and that includes the players as well. You better believe that there's guys that have been here a while that have developed those relationships with Eagles players, guys like Schwarber, Harper, Castellanos, JT, Aaron Nola, who's been here forever. Like all of these guys that have been longtime Phillies that are like, man, I want that for us. I want to experience what those guys experience. It's motivation to say, hey, look, teams in this city, they might seem cursed sometimes, but they're not. We can win it all. We can go do this. And they set the bar. So let's go try and meet it. It's this constant idea of one-upping. I talk about all the time on the radio. I don't know that I've ever brought it up on this podcast, though, because we're focused on the Phillies, right? And we're right now talking about the mentality that this baseball team is going to have, seeing their next-door neighbor, stadium-wise, in the Eagles win the Super Bowl. But when Boston sports was at their, like, Tom Brady heyday, right, when they were at their greatest, and the Red Sox were killing the curse of the Bambino, and Brady was beating everybody in the NFL, and the Bruins were running into one every once in a while, and the Celtics in '08 won the title. It was like the teams fed off each other. It wasn't just that the Patriots had this dynasty. It wasn't just that the Red Sox came back from down 3-0 to the New York Yankees in the ALCS. It was, hey, they won their season. Let's go one-up them, or let's go equal them, or let's go prove that we're the city of champions. One team doesn't make you a city of champions. That makes that team champions. The Philadelphia Phillies should have motivation to say, look, what they did, why not us? Why can't we go ahead and build off that momentum? It'll make this fan base more excited. The fan base, not only do I think will be a little bit softer on the Phillies with this Eagles Super Bowl win, but I think we'll be more motivated to see it again. We'll have more belief that we actually are like this big brother team rather than little brother team. Like we do feel like sometimes in Philadelphia, despite being a major market. So that's all good. Now, the potential drawbacks, the potential negatives of the Eagles winning the Super Bowl from the Phillies' perspective. Nobody kill me on this if you're a big-time Eagles fan. Like I'm so glad they won. I'm so glad they won. I've shed tears over it already this week. But for the Phillies, now they're the team that can't get it done, right? They already kind of were, but the Eagles have now won their Super Bowl again. The Phillies haven't won since '08. The Eagles have 2 in that time, and they're a team that no one ever believed was going to get it done. So, like, the narrative can shift very, very quickly. But there's now this clear discrepancy, whereas in the last time the Birds went in 2022, that was the year that the Philadelphia Eagles, well, it was 22-23. So it would have been the year after the Phillies played in the World Series. Obviously, we know it was like the multiple championship losses in a span of a month for Philadelphia, which sucked. But it wasn't like, oh, the Eagles didn't win it. They were on the same playing field. And then the Eagles collapsed last year, and the Phillies go back to the NLCS last year. I'm talking 2 years ago. And it was like, oh, the Phillies are the gold standard in this town. Well, now that's flipped. So now you look at it and I don't want to say hatred, right? Because I don't think that we truly like hate our teams. We love our teams, but the passion leads sometimes to anger. The anger that will be displaced by the sheer amount of joy facing the Philadelphia Eagles now could easily be put on the Philadelphia Phillies. To mention the other 2 teams in the city, all due respect to the Sixers and Flyers, they're not championship contenders right now. They're not having a meaningful season. They're not really doing anything crazy that people are going to watch. So no one's like, oh, basketball season. Oh, hockey season. It's the Phils are up next. That's it. We're almost foregoing the rest of basketball and hockey season here in Philadelphia. So the pressure's on the Phillies. Now, I said it does take some pressure off and that the fan base will be less, they'll be more satiated as just like a general sports fan. But for the organization of the Philadelphia Phillies, the pressure is on to say, yo, if you want to keep the attention of people in this town, if you want to keep pace with that team across the street from you, and there's no like malice or anything in this. It's not like the teams don't like each other when they win. They love to see each other win. But you have to now capitalize on the opportunities that you have. So the sports dynamic of the city is going to be in a very interesting spot. The fan base's mentality towards the Philadelphia Phillies will be in a very interesting spot. It could go one of two ways. Again, we could either be satiated based on the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, or we could be more critical of the Phillies based on the fact that the Eagles did this and we know it's possible. And now the standard is raised even more for sports teams in this city. So that's kind of the mental gymnastics that you go through when you think about how a win for one team affects another. And with the Phillies being the next championship contending team in this city to start a season, which is, trust me, we're going to talk about it coming up next. It's coming up soon. We're going to get into the spring training dates to know, the big dates from here till opening day. We're also going to talk about what we're watching for as pitchers and catchers report to Clearwater literally tomorrow. Yes, it is a short break between football season and baseball season this year. But we're going to see exactly how this plays out. And it's very, very interesting, the dynamic that this fan base is going to have this year. And if you don't think like, oh, well, why does it matter how the fan base looks at the Philadelphia Phillies? The fan base matters, guys. We know this. We talk about all the time the home field advantage you have at Citizens Bank Park when that place is rocking. The focus that you get from a fan base with this type of passion here in Philadelphia. They can absolutely impact the season positively, and they can impact the season negatively. If people are like out on this Phillies team early, they'll be out on this Phillies team early. And if people believe that we're going to run it back and win a Super Bowl and a World Series in the same calendar year, that place is going to be rocking, man. They're going to believe, we're going to believe, because listen, I'm a fan as well. We're going to believe that that stuff is now possible. So we're at this teeter-totter point of how the city views the Phillies. They're probably leaning more on the negative side, and that's why it is a big season to say, hey, Eagles, we want some of that for ourselves. The journey starts tomorrow, folks. The journey starts tomorrow. So coming up next, we're going to talk about the spring training dates to know, and what we're going to be looking at and everything is people report down there. Pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. Some guys are already down. It seems crazy to say just 2 days after the big game down in New Orleans, but it's baseball season, folks. We'll talk about it coming up next. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. Yes, football done. Basketball now takes center stage for FanDuel. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel stuff. I mean, their live betting feature is awesome because you can get a feel for the game first. You're not just betting like a spread at the start of the game. No, you can say, hey, I understand for example, the Sixers are losing right now, but they look like they're heating up. I'm going to take them live. Like, it's the best way to bet sports, in my opinion. And FanDuel gives you the best way to live bet. So you get paid instantly. The app is easy to use. It's super easy. So right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's talk about the big dates to know for spring training. Yes, tomorrow, February 12th, pitchers and catchers will be reporting to Clearwater, Florida, and we will be underway in spring training. I can't believe it, man, how quickly things change, right? Because that's the wonderful thing about having these long seasons. Remember, like the Phillies playing in the World Series against the Astros, and they went to like November. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, okay, well, basketball season's already rolling. The hockey season's already rolling. Football season's already a couple of months in. It was just like you don't really have the time to transition. Well, the transition between football season and baseball season this year, Eagles Super Bowl and Phillies spring training was what, 2 days? Yeah, it's crazy. So enjoy your final day of rest before we got to get into Red October mode. It's going to be so much fun. The hunt for Red October, well, it's going to have to begin early this year because you know the competition you have in division with the Mets and with the Braves, and in the league with the Dodgers, and just in baseball in general with some really solid teams out there. But let's get into the dates you need to know, because I know a lot of you out there are like, I knew spring training was coming up, but I was so zoned in on the Super Bowl run that I don't even know exactly what's going on with the Phillies as far as dates. So the first key date to know about spring training, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. That's Wednesday, February 12th. Now, what does pitchers and catchers reporting exactly mean? Because some people take that as just like they all show up like in Major League. They're all pulling up in taxis and in cars and whatever and walking in from the parking lot the same day. So not everybody gets there the same day. Some guys have been down there already. Some guys have been down there during the off season. Some guys may be late depending on things that go on as far as travel, illness, anything like that. Remember the times that Ranger Suarez had like visa issues, or he was sick and couldn't like get going first and everything. But the expectation from the organization is to have all the pitchers and catchers there by tomorrow to begin working. And what are they going to begin working on? But that's going to be just light tossing, maybe like a flat ground. If you're not familiar with what a flat ground is, it's not like a full bullpen. You kind of just stand like 40, 45 feet away, or maybe you go to the full 60 feet, 6 inches, and you just kind of throw lightly and just work on mechanics and work on spots. And they're throwing like 70 miles an hour as opposed to like 95 miles an hour, but just lightly working through stuff, do some light jogging, some calisthenics. It's a very slow start. You're not just going to see these guys jump on the mound and get ready to rip. You might see some guys throw tomorrow, depending on like who was down there more. And trust me, the Phillies know who was on what throwing plan over the offseason, who's available to get out there and start throwing. But think about the length of the season. Tomorrow's February 12th. If the Philadelphia Phillies play for the World Series, they could very well play into November. We've got a long, long way to go. What is that? So February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October is already 9 months. November would be like the 10th month. But let's just call it 9 months that it could be that these guys will have to be playing baseball pretty much every day. You don't want to blow anybody out on day one. So that's the first one. Pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to do a lot of preview stuff of like what to look at with the pitchers and catchers, what to look at with spring training in general and everything. We're going to do a little bit of that today as well, because there are so many storylines that now all of a sudden smack you in the face. It's like, oh, wow, we've got to talk about this quickly. We've got to talk about that. We've got to talk about this player, focus here, new names, non-roster invites, a whole bunch of things that you're going to be hearing about in spring training as the Phillies news cycle goes from nothing to like everything all at once. Shout out to that movie about Stephen Hawking. First spring game. So the first time we'll see actual game action will be Saturday, February 22nd. It's only 10 days away from tomorrow. They're going to get rolling real quick. And you're going to see mostly those young guys, the non-roster invitees that are going to get those opportunities. Normally you don't see until like early March the guys actually start to put together a semblance of a lineup where you might see like 4 or 5 major league guys hitting back to back. So they'll take their time. They'll have split games. We know how it works. They'll have like a home and home against guys, against other teams down in Florida where half the roster will travel, half the roster will stay. So don't expect to see like a crazy strong lineup put together of what this team is going to look like on February 22nd. By the way, they're taking on the Tigers. But that's something that, of course, will be our first time to see actual baseball action. And I'd expect there to be, well, there will be like some names that you know, even if you just follow like the major league part of the Philadelphia Phillies in that game. It's at the Tigers, so you won't see them at Baycare Ballpark. But remember, like, as soon as you see that, I can't wait for the first home run of the year to go over Frenchie's in left field. The straw roof bar out there that is such a mainstay at Philadelphia Phillies spring training games. Can't wait for that. So we'll keep an eye on when the games start. And then opening day is Thursday, March 27th. They start the season this year in Washington against the Nationals. So they won't be back home to start the season, but they'll be on the road. Bottom line is that's 44 days away, folks. That's 44 days. We're just like a little bit over, let's call it a month and a half until opening day. Crazy. It's right around the corner. It's going to be a dead sprint through spring training, and we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about with the Philadelphia Phillies. So my point in all of that is get excited for Philadelphia Phillies baseball. You are not going to want to be late to this one. You don't want to just show up on March 27th and say, okay, well, I haven't really caught up with what the Philadelphia Phillies are doing, who's on the team, who's good, who's going to be in the lineup. Like, no, this is the time where we start to figure out, hey, what could this team be? What are some of the position battles? What are the narratives about players? Who's coming in great shape? Who's coming in not so great shape? Who looks good in spring training? Who looks not so good in spring training? And there are going to be some interesting storylines. I've already started to butt out. Now, like, I'm just kind of priming you this episode, but tomorrow's episode, we're going to get into like a deep breakdown of some of the big storylines to watch in spring training. But coming up next, what I want to do just before we wrap up today's episode, and those are really the three big dates in spring training you need to know. Again, Wednesday, February 12th, tomorrow, pitchers and catchers. First spring game is Saturday, February 22nd. In between the 12th and the 22nd, the rest of the team will be reporting. So the position players won't be down there tomorrow, or at least all of them won't be, but they'll begin the trek to spring training, and everyone will be down there before the 22nd. We'll talk on the day that the rest of the position players have to be there. I imagine it's probably like, I want to say Saturday. I'll let you know in tomorrow's episode exactly the date on that. I don't have it in front of me, but they'll be down there before the 22nd. And then opening day, Thursday, March 27th at the Nationals is when the games actually start counting. Feels like a long way away. It'll get here quick once you start seeing baseball being played. But coming up next, I just kind of want to prime you for like what some of the big storylines are. Not diving deep into any of them yet, but like what are we watching for with pitchers and catchers, with spring training in general, where we're at right now with the Philadelphia Phillies. Just a quick set everything where it wants to be. Basically, the bags are packed for Clearwater. What we're going to do coming up next is, hey, let's just double check we have everything. It's the double check storyline segment of what you need to be thinking about as the Phillies get ready to start the season of their own. So we'll talk about that coming up as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Again, I just want to remind you one time, go ahead and check out our guys over at Locked On Eagles. This is a momentous week for them. They're not going to have sleep anytime soon, I imagine, as they celebrate covering a team that won a Super Bowl. They're going to have great content. So if you're like me and you're still jazzed up about the Birds, as soon as you get done with this episode, check out Locked On Eagles. Keep it in the Locked On podcast family. They do great work over there. But we're focused on the Phillies now, right? It's our turn to take center stage, Philadelphia Phillies fans. It's going to be Locked On Phillies season real darn soon. It actually always is. Don't let anybody tell you differently. But what are some of the big storylines that we just need to have a hold on as spring training begins tomorrow? Literally, we go to bed tonight, and tomorrow morning we are going to wake up and see videos from Clearwater, Florida, of guys like Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola and Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo, now in a Phillies uniform, playing catch with guys like JT Realmuto and Garrett Stubbs and Rafael Marchand and all of these guys that are going to be vying for starting spots or roles on the team, the bullpen pitchers. That's coming tomorrow. Just before the parade even happens for the Eagles, we'll be getting videos of sunny Clearwater, Florida. So that'll be a beautiful thing. It's about snow here in Philadelphia, so it'll be a nice touch of warmth, but also a reminder that there are some things to focus on. The first thing is going to be that extra spot in the bullpen. The Phillies have not committed to anybody in that 8th spot in the bullpen. So as pitchers and catchers report, who's going to be the guy that seems to make the most sense to fill that role? It could be anybody. I don't think the Eagles, I don't think the Phillies have a clear front runner for that 8th spot in the bullpen. So you're going to have 7 guys that feel pretty comfortably they can make the major league roster as a bullpen pitcher. And then you're going to have one spot for like, I don't know what, 10 guys? Probably not 10 guys that could hold down that spot. And we'll go through the list of pitchers and catchers and everything when they actually report tomorrow. But I think we could probably say 6 to 8 potential names that could end up filling in that spot in the Phillies bullpen. So that'll be something we'll talk about. Now, the rotation, as far as starters is concerned, there's not going to be a crazy amount there to watch. I guess how Jesus Luzardo looks. Ranger Suarez in a contract year if he's healthy. We know spring training has been trouble for him in the past as far as showing up on time, being healthy, being in great shape, not being sick or anything like that. Some of that in his control, some of that out of his control. But the starting rotation is set. Catcher is going to be huge. Now, it seems like the inside track to being the major league catcher is going to be Rafael Marchand, who's out of minor league options. Garrett Stubbs has a minor league option. So that kind of says everything you need it to say right there. But who knows? Like if Rafael Marchand goes out and he stinks in spring training, they will put Garrett Stubbs on this team. And then they just won't be able to send him down, which would not be ideal for the Philadelphia Phillies. So Marchand's in for a very important spring in his young career. That's a storyline to watch. Hitting-wise, we know all the storylines. Like, can the guys change their approach? Can Bryson Stott put together a better season offensively? Can Trey Turner hit the slider? Can Kyle Schwarber continue to improve his growth as an overall hitter? Is Nick Castellanos the hot hitter we saw in the second half or the terrible hitter we saw in the first half? And the truth is the combination of Nick Castellanos' ability as a hitter has him much more on the positive side. But like, what guy are we getting to start off 2025? I mean, is JT Realmuto looking healthy after a season that saw him get knee surgery, miss a month, not be all that productive? Who's going to win the starting job in center field? Who are the depth pieces that are going to fill out roster spots behind outfielders Max Kepler, Nick Castellanos, and whoever's in center field, whether that's Brandon Marsh or Johan Rojas? Like, there are a lot of things that we're going to be focusing on for the Philadelphia Phillies. And the cool thing with spring training is just like so many guys go. You're also going to have depth guys that'll be very interesting. That'll just give us like these little pops, flashes of color of like, oh, this is a cool story. This is a cool moment. Like Andrew Painter is not going to make the major league roster out of camp. But the first time he throws, you better believe we're going to be talking about it. And he's not even throwing in a game. He's just going to be throwing on like the backfields and just throw bullpens. Like they're not even letting him pitching game action down there in spring training because they want to be so cautious about how they handle their best prospects development or rather recovery from Tommy John surgery. So that will be something that we focus on. Who are the young players that could get called up in points? Like guys like Buddy Kennedy or Cal Stevenson or Weston Wilson, like the depth pieces. There's so much. Who are the minor leaguers that's like that are getting their first taste of spring training, top prospects that we haven't seen play at this level before. Guys like Aiden Miller, who's going to get a chance to be like, okay, let me just drink this in really quick. This is a major league spring training. Like I haven't experienced this before. He's not going to play at the major league level this year, but to get the opportunity to see guys like that. The Phillies, while there aren't many positions on the major league roster as starters up for grabs, you're still going to see a lot of very interesting storylines that could make a big difference in this year, or at least set the tone for what this year is going to be like. And all of that starts tomorrow with pitchers and catchers reporting down there to Clearwater and baseball season getting ready to begin. It's a beautiful thing to have baseball just about back here in Philadelphia. One more sleep, and when you wake up on a snowy day here in the Northeast tomorrow, you will have videos on social media of just warm, sunny Clearwater, Florida, right outside of the Tampa Bay area, and the Philadelphia Phillies wearing their shorts and probably long sleeve shirts and out there tossing baseballs around. I love it. The pop of the mitt is going to hit different knowing that we just became Super Bowl champions like 2 days ago. But get ready, folks. Buckle up. Enjoy this night's sleep because tomorrow the marathon towards hopefully a World Series and another championship for Philadelphia begins. And there's going to be a lot to talk about. So what do you want to do? You want to make sure that you're rating and reviewing if you're listening to this in podcast forms, you're subscribing to the Locked On Phillies YouTube channel. It's free. It's easy. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted because we might post every day for the rest of the month, including weekends. Like, we're going to have so much stuff to get into. You don't want to miss any of it. So go ahead and check that out. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And tomorrow, we're breaking down pitchers and catchers reporting. It's going to be a fun one as baseball season gets going, at least the spring training version, on our next episode of Locked On Phillies. I will talk to you then. And once again, congrats to the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia, you are once again Super Bowl champs. Are the Phillies up next? We start to find out tomorrow. All right, I'll talk to you then.